Hi, welcome to the Initiative for Faith and Family. This is the Spiritual Parenting video series. And today we are talking about the environment of faith community. And the faith community is really the body of Christ. So it's the people we surround ourselves and our children with that can put God on display. They come alongside of us. They help us in this endeavor so that we're not just trying to do this thing alone. The faith community is rich in so many things that bring benefit to our children, but it also helps our children have different aspects of who God is and how they're displayed in different people's lives. And this can be our physical family, our grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and it also is the church family. It's those people who play spiritual roles in our kids as spiritual aunts or spiritual grandfathers or spiritual parents alongside of us. And so this is a rich environment for our kids. And this was the intention of God, that they would be raised in an environment like this. So today my guest is Matthew Testammer. He and his wife are pastors here, and they have two children. And I picked you for this, Matthew, because you and your family just embody this environment of the faith community. I don't think I'm ever at church when you're not at church, and I think you're here at church a lot when I'm not. And this is just something that you have chosen to raise your children in. So talk to me a little bit about why this is so important for you and your wife to raise your kids in a rich faith community.
Well, you're so kind. First, let me say you have been one of those aunts to our kids. We've been students of parenting, and you've been a model to us of what spiritual parenting would look like. But we didn't always have that, right? It's not like you show up at church and you have aunts and uncles and you know the pastors and you feel connected and loved. And that was us. We had a 1-year-old and we were pregnant with our second.
Wow.
And we were questioning, do we move back home? Do we go where mom and dad is?
Yeah.
And so we reached out to my childhood pastor, Pastor Lee and Mary. We met with them. And they gave us a word that changed our trajectory. They said, grow where you're planted. It made us really pray, Lord, where are we planted? We're planted here at New Life Church for such a time as this. You know our circumstances, you know what we need. And so how do we start cultivating the soil? How do we start serving? How do we start getting involved? We really do want to grow. And this was the prayer of Jesus. In John 17, he talks about, I want my joy to be complete in you. And so as we raise our kids knowing that we want to be followers of Jesus and experience his joy, his prayer is that they would be one as him and the Father were one. So faith community has always been a very important priority to us, and we need to grow where we're planted, and we believe that the Lord is the one that has planted us here.
Well, so good. Yeah, I think what you just described is what so many families feel like. They maybe were away from church for a while and they have a child and they're coming back to church, or they move into a new town, or, they move to a different church. And there's that moment where you walk in and you don't know anyone and you feel really isolated. And there's nothing worse than feeling alone when you're in the midst of a lot of people. It's worse than just being alone, right?
Yeah, and a lot of change.
Parenting
brings a lot of changes in every season.
Yeah, and you feel insecure and you walk in. And I love that word, grow where you're planted. So you have to push through that moment of not knowing anyone. And what are some of those things that you did? Like, what are some of the practical things that you went from being a first-time visitor in a faith community to that this is my faith community?
Yeah, the first thing that I think that we need to do is serve.
Yeah.
Right? We often want to be served, but Jesus says serve. Go and serve where you can. For me, that looked like high school ministry. I'm going to go serve these high schoolers. And then it's like, I can serve in the young adults. And then when there's marriage and there's change and there's kids, well, is that still the place? And so we inquire the Lord, where do you have me in this season?
Yeah.
Where do we have unity as a family to serve? And who who is the Lord highlighting? Who needs to be served? What are the needs of the church? And to
Yeah.
know those things. So I think that's a big priority to us, to know to be served. And we would also say, speaking of priorities, like, show me your calendar and
Yeah.
I'll show you your priorities. So for
Wow.
us, we're showing up every week. So
Yeah.
thank you. Well, we don't come to church so people like recognize us. We come to church because this is where the action is. This is where the joy is. This is
Yeah.
where there's fullness of life. This is where we can be known and know other people. I get choked up about it because, like, we don't always get to choose who our parents are. But by God's grace, He knows us. And then He reveals people that want to know us and love us and care
Yeah.
for us. And so we call those the 1%, who are those people that truly know you and are willing to care for you. And for us, it is a blessing that it is our parents, but it also is the aunties and the uncles and the
Yes.
church. It's our faith
Like, you
community.
surround your kids with not just your voice and your wife's voice, but all those other voices that are saying the same thing that you're saying, but slightly different. And I know for my kids, that became really important in like middle, like sophomore, junior, senior year, even into early college years. I was so grateful that we had invested in the faith community and that these were spiritual aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters, because there's a time when your voice just starts sounding like wah, 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 wah. And then somebody else is saying it, or they could go and share a story, or they could go to them for wisdom. And surrounding our kids with that just strengthens their faith, because it's not just mom and dad's faith. This is a host of people that believe this. And I know your kids in particular, and they're so strong in their faith, and they walk around in their faith community knowing that they are known and loved. And I love that that started with you serving. Serving and calendars, you put those together.
Yeah.
So often I hear parents say, like, my life is so overwhelming. We're doing so many things, and there's sports and there's school. We don't have time to serve right now. We will later. But that's the lie of the enemy.
It
and
is.
Your kids are in sports, your kids are involved in things, and yet you've made this a priority. So what did you have to sacrifice? Because I'm with you. I think serving is the best way to attach yourself in the faith community. What did you have to sacrifice?
Yeah, sacrifice is a good word, but let me start by saying I'm not good at everything.
Yeah.
And I don't want my kids to just be able to do what I can do. I want them to experience the body of Christ, where there's many gifts and many
Amen.
talents, and where they can learn from Michelle Anthony and Kendra and Kristen, and they can learn from Joel. And there is a gift to a family that knows them,
Yeah.
right? And so that doesn't seem like sacrifice to me. I remember in October of 2002, do you remember what happened then?
No.
The Angels made the World Series, right? We're both
You've got
were
that.
both were in that
I
Orange
just
County
don't remember
for a while.
it was 2002.
Right? So the Angels were in the World Series. You know what I did? I waited outside in line for tickets for almost 40 hours.
You know, you are a diehard.
Yes. And I'm waiting in line, and it was actually really fun. The people around me, you're getting to know them, you're
Yeah.
hearing stories. And we sacrifice for things all the time.
You're right.
I'll wait in line 40 hours for tickets. And it was
Wow.
awesome. I got to go to game one with my grandpa. It was wonderful. But you know what else is really wonderful? Showing up to church every Sunday, worshiping Jesus, being known by
Yeah.
people, knowing people, laughing together, right? You talk about in the book about baptisms and the people that surround my kid
Oh, boy.
and know them.
Yeah.
There might be a dozen family members that are around, but I promise you, at my son's high school graduation, there's going to be hundreds, if we let them, people from our church
Yeah.
that want to come alongside him and give him words of encouragement, words of knowledge, speak into his life. And so there's a sacrifice. Have you ever been tired, or you're like fighting on the way to church? Or
Sure.
one Sunday morning when our kids were little, we forgot shoes for our boy. We're like, well, we don't have shoes, we need to go home. It's really easy to say, hey, this is inconvenient. I don't know if this is best today. I'm tired, I'm hungry, this is going on.
Right.
I'm going to just stay home.
Yes.
And a sacrifice is just being dedicated, saying, no, These are the people that the Lord has asked me to grow with, to be planted here. And so I'm going to sacrifice and I'm going to show up when I feel like it and when I don't feel like it.
Wow. And your kids see that. Talk to me about the difference between, because this was a value for me as well, but I also had friends who their parents made it maybe legalistic. So you could never not go to church, and that almost, it warred against them. So how do we, when we're creating this environment in our home, how do we make that winsome and we don't cross over into the legalism of you have to be in church every Sunday, and then our kids kind of rebel against it, you know?
Yeah.
Because we know families on both sides, and everybody has different kids. Some are just like, let's go to church, and others are like, I don't want to, especially as they get older. How do we navigate that?
Yeah, that goes back to modeling.
Yeah.
And even storytelling. You know, I didn't grow up in the church. And so I'm 6, 7 years old when a pastor comes into my dad's restaurant and invites us to church.
Really?
And I remember the change in my family when we weren't church people and then we were church people. Wow. And there's Awana on Wednesday nights, and there's Sunday school, and there's parties, potlucks happening around the church. And so for what I would say is we need to model that.
Yeah.
Like there's a joy in going to the church. There is donuts waiting for us. Your friends are here, you know, like, and we experience that in real life. There's always changes. Our son is all of a sudden in junior high, and everyone's older, everyone's bigger. I was just the leader. It's intimidating. How do I show up? And we asked him to seek out, like, what would make it better for you, Levi? Like, okay, you don't have to go this week, but why do you not want to go?
Yeah.
And to really kind of drill down to some of the roots.
I love that you did that, Matthew. You didn't just say, get in the car because this is what the Stammers do. Right. You didn't lead with a heavy hand. You gave grace for his moment. You understood, you attuned to his feelings, and then why? Tell me why. And sometimes they don't have language for it, but sometimes they do. And you enter into that conversation.
Yeah, and you know what he decided?
What?
It would be really neat if his baseball team started coming with him.
I see his baseball team.
Don't you see?
They all come in together on Wednesdays.
You sent an email that the junior high ministry is growing. I'm like, that's because the whole baseball team and like all these people are coming to church. And so his birthday's in December.
Okay.
Right? So he's 5 months into junior high. This is difficult. And we're praying around his birthday, praying around his faith community, people around him. And we used to say, make a wish and blow out the candle. And I remember one year it was like, oh, keep that wish to yourself. And now we say, hey, share with us, like, what's that hope for the year ahead? And Levi's hope was for one of his teammates that he would start coming to church with him. He started praying for this boy. He started asking, would he come to church? And so you know what happened? I think it was his prayers in January. We started practicing baseball at Wednesday nights. Wednesday practice was from 6 to 7. And so what did we do after church? You want to go to after baseball practice? Yeah. Do you want to go to church? All of a sudden, my truck was full.
Wow.
There's these 13-year-olds coming. His wish on his 13th birthday was his friend would know Jesus as his Lord. Michelle, it happened the second Wednesday of the year.
Wednesday.
It was just God's grace. It was just to understand, like, okay, why church? And I think that begs the question. At that season, my 13-year-old wants to know why. Like, why? Why are we doing this? Why are we coming? And then because we've built that foundation of a faith community, he knows who he can go to, including me, but maybe not me every time. It might be someone else.
And then you have to be okay with that too, right? We can't let our identity be wrapped up in that there's going to another person. We celebrate that. We used to tell our kids all the time, here are the approved list of people that you can talk to about this. And that we wanted to make that list as wide as possible. But what a beautiful story. I've never heard of that. Like at your birthday, make a wish. We we should proclaim that.
Yeah, you're around
Then
your
we all know how to
community.
pray for what
Right.
is on our kids' hearts or what they're longing for and all of that. Wow. I'm going to start that even
Yeah,
now. I
let's
think
do
that's
it.
such a great thing. So serving, you talked about modeling. That's also your attitudes. You've talked about attuning to your kids and being sensitive, because as a lot of parents are struggling with this as their kids get older, they don't necessarily know they don't know how they fit anymore in church because they're changing, their friend circles are changing, maybe it's not cool or whatever it is. But I love how you're talking about you're having to switch you're going to have to grow with your kids. And when they're little and you say, get in the car, that's different than when they're 13, 14, and you still have some years ahead of you.
Yeah.
And so we're always learning and growing. What about you? What has been the impact on you, your marriage, the faith community for you? Not just your kids, but for you and for your wife and you.
Yeah, that's a good question. Jesus says to seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you, right? I worry about what the future is going to be for my kids. I have concerns about finances, or my kids are going to start driving. How in the world am I going to get them a car or insurance? But Jesus promises if we seek his kingdom and his righteousness, all those other things he'll take care of. And we don't have to worry about tomorrow. So the faith community has helped me stand firm. I've been in the same Bible study with Chris and Michelle, my wife Leah and I, the four of us, for 15 years.
15 years.
And they know us.
Yeah.
They know on a Friday night if I'm heavy. They know if there's joy. They know when it's my birthday. They know it's our anniversary. They know the potholes that we've experienced. They know the heartbreak. They know when my dad died in 2020 and we were tired. Yeah. We were hurt. They knew what to do. Yeah. Our community knew how to jump into action. My pastor, Pastor Daniel, knew the time was coming. He shows up our house at 5:30 in the morning. Life can be heavy. Yeah. And Jesus promises that if we walk with him and we get in the yoke with him, he'll carry it with us. Yeah. And for me, the community has been Jesus. They carry it with me. I mean, the highs and the lows, the good, and I'm uncertain, and they're not. Their faith is strong. Yeah. They are weak, and I'm strong. And that has made all the difference for me and then for our marriage.
And your kids are watching that too. They're watching how the faith community has come alongside of you, and whether it's a meal or a word or showing up, all of those things. My kids have witnessed that in our lives too. We've been really rich in having people that we were mentoring that maybe weren't as far along in their faith or being parents as we, and then peers. We're kind of all figuring this out and going after Jesus together and raising our kids together. And then those who were older or wiser, and they could say, this too will pass. Mm-hmm. And you just know it won't, but you believe, you borrow their faith for a little bit. And that's that faith community that we need around us, and so important. I'm so passionate, especially for this generation, that the allure that there's thousands of friends online or thousands of likes, but the loneliest generation, psychologists are saying, that we're isolated. We're coming out of a season of the ramifications of a pandemic. If ever there was a time to be involved. So if somebody's listening right now and their Sundays has not been part of a faith community because they're just watching online, or they're reading their Bible, or they're doing their devotions, like what something that they could do today?
Wow. Pastor Daniel said a few weeks ago, the goal of the church is not to know everybody, but for everybody to be known.
Wow.
If you're watching at home and you're chasing after Jesus, awesome. Continue studying the word, pray, love the people around you. Like, go to the soccer pitch and love those people. Go to the baseball field and pray for them. But we want you as a pastor, as someone that has been seeking after Jesus. I want the people that are watching online to be known.
Yeah, that's so good. You can't know everybody, but you need to be known by someone. Yeah. My son and daughter are raising our grandkids. My son-in-law and my daughter are raising our grandkids, and they have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And so life is crazy, and there's jobs and work and traveling and all the things, but they've made church a priority on Sundays, and then not just going to church, but then recently my daughter said, I want to get involved. I want to be known. I want my kids to be known. I want what we had growing up. And so she just started serving, doing social media for her church. And it's just that entryway in, and now people are knowing her, and she's interviewing people on Sundays, and it's become not a burden, but the greatest joy. And of course, my mom heart and my grandma heart, that makes me happy. But thank you for modeling this so well for so many people that are watching you, and also for your kids, and just passing on this to your children and to all the people that are watching you, because it is such an important part of it's what God's very best intent for us is.
It is. Let's be his body.
Let's be his body. Yeah. Let's not do it alone.
Let's not do it alone.
So if you want more information about the environment of faith community, you can read about this in chapter 5 of my book, Spiritual Parenting. And also you can check out our website for the further resources that we have there for you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, Matthew, for joining us as well.
Thank you.